ways to bet on certain umpires and really the whole back and forth between players and umpires. So the best under umpire this year is Andy Fletcher, 5.7 runs a game. The best over umpire, Todd Tishner, averaging 11.82 runs a game. So these are kind of small samples, but some stats that are out there about each umpire. So before we get to Cody's thoughts on umpires, how to talk to them, here's a clip of the latest podcast. Paul, what is the full name of the podcast? Unwritten?
It's Jimmy Rollins and Ron Darling going behind baseball secret rules. Comes out every Wednesday. This is episode 7. Fielding Culbreth, longtime umpire, who's now down at kind of doing consulting in the minors, but he joined us. Really interesting conversation. And the question that came up that really intrigued me as well was, okay, are there 7, the George Carlin, 7 words that you can't say? Just what is that line specifically when you're trying to talk to an umpire?
Let's hear that.
Obviously, there are some combinations, maybe one word, maybe it has to be a group of words, sayings that everybody know heads below the belt. What are those words? And I would like to frame it as in, at what point you're like, okay, that's enough, because they're getting close.
I mean, as long as you're just arguing the pitch and you're saying that you think I'm wrong and that it's this, you can use the foulest language in the world, and that doesn't matter. It's baseball, and it's grown men playing baseball. We're not in church. Mm-hmm. We're on a baseball field. So you can say whatever you want to say about that pitch, that call, that anything. It's when you direct it and get personal. Mm-hmm. Typically, it's when you put the word "you" in front of it, unless you're saying you are really good. Anything shy of that, when you put "you" in it, I can assure you, you have the word following that automatically is about to cross the line.
So that's horse as opposed to your horse.
All day long. That's you can that's horse all day long. When I go home from Myrtle Beach to my house, I'm going to get I'm going to get your horse too from my wife. Okay, but she will tell me that's horse all day long. Okay, and that's okay, and that's okay on the field.
Cody, of all of us, you're the only one that's been in this realm. So give us your perspective on this. Right way to talk to an umpire, wrong way. Now, before you start, have you ever been rung up? Have you been thrown out of the game?
One time and one time only, and I didn't deserve it at all. In fact, he threw me out because he should have thrown out my catcher, Adam Moore, for going off on him, the batter, before that. And trust me, the word "you" was used many, 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 many times in that argument. Doesn't get rung up. I go up to the plate, strike 3 call, roughly 6 inches off the plate. I just turn around, I'm like, oh, come on, Larry, where was that? He's like, that was a good pitch. It caught the corner. I said, the corner of what, Larry? And he was like, that's it, you're out of here. I'm like, for that? You can't toss me for that. And then I just immediately calmed down and got really close. I'm like, Larry, did you just toss me because you didn't toss Adam? He's like, you guys been on me all day. I'm like, Larry, answer my question. Did you just toss me because you didn't toss Adam? And he kind of took a pause, like, yes. I said, thank you for admitting it. Manager comes in and immediately goes off on him. He's like, Cody, I got this. Larry, listen, you've been terrible tonight. Like, it's maybe one of the worst games of all time. In fact, I am going to start LinkedIn profile for you today. We got to find you a different job, because this is not clearly working out, because right now, the way you're umpiring this game, you're not getting to the show, and no one on this field is going to get to the show either, the way you're umpiring the game. And immediately he was tossed out. It was the funniest 20 minutes of my life. That was the only time I was ever tossed out of a game. I didn't use the word "you." I didn't deserve it. He admitted that I didn't deserve it. But yeah, that what the umpire just said in that clip you just played, 100% true. As long as you don't direct it at the umpire. There are so many ways to argue with an umpire, and there's actually polite ways to do it, which in my opinion, according to my wife at least, is worse. My wife thinks the way I argued with umpires was so ungodly passive-aggressive that she says, if I did this with my girlfriends, I wouldn't have any friends. I said, probably right. So what I would do is, if the umpire calls a bad pitch that I don't like, just dig my right foot in and be like, hey, I'll just say his name's John. John, where do you got that pitch? I got that at the bottom of the zone. Bottom, no more. I got that just a little down. And he's like, I'll take a closer look this next pitch. I'm like, all right, I appreciate you, John. Get back in. That's it. Next pitch goes, and I'm like, hey, John, that pitch you said that was the lowest to go. That was a little lower. I got a problem there. He's like, Dak, I just had that at the same spot. I'm like, it wasn't the same spot, John. I'm going to need you to really get a better look at that, buddy. Hop back in. I did that all the time. I would look at him. It'd be a very calm conversation. It was even better when I would catch too, because I'd had the same every single missed ball call, even balls that I thought were pretty close. I would just start to slowly manipulate them a little bit. And I got that a little bit on the corner. It's like, got about a half inch off, Dak. I'm like, I don't know. I think you need a better look at that. Yeah. All day long. It's the best. I love manipulating umpires. They're easy. They're dumb. Why did they become umpires?
So do you think it worked? Like, did it have a cumulative effect over the course of the game? If you kept saying, I don't think so. So you think by the end, like, they were on your side of things?
I had every umpire love me by the end of my career, which was a stark contrast to the early part of my career where we would just yell at umpires. We were 21, 22-year-old kids, fiery, screaming at guys, making calls that we didn't like. Keep in mind, umpires are not good at any level, and that includes the big leagues. They don't get better. It's the same thing, and it's not their fault. I want to make that abundantly clear. Umpiring is the most thankless job on planet Earth. I don't know how anyone even tries to get into umpiring, because no matter what call you make, 50% of that field is going to be furious with you, period. So it's not a great job to have. Second, it's hard to do, especially nowadays. Behind home plate, everybody's throwing 98 plus with outrageous spin rate, crazy movement. It's very hard to really see this type of movement and speed to the millimeter, looking at, an invisible box that isn't there unless you're watching it on TV on ESPN.
Now I'm glad, because there are some people that think that strike zone box on TV is very misleading and they want it to go away. And I'm curious your thoughts.
Want it to go away. I only want it to be improved and improved and improved. Now, the concept of robot umps, I think, is one of the more misleading phrases used throughout baseball these days. Because, one, I don't think the umpiring should be entirely taken out of umpires' hands, especially for the strike zone, because the strike zone is a bit tricky. And we've seen automated strike zones being used in the Arizona Fall League. We've seen it used in the Atlantic League, which is an independent league that has an association with Major League Baseball. And it's not a foolproof system. I cannot stress this enough. There are a lot of extra idiosyncrasies in baseball that you have to take into account. Player height, obviously, which, of course, the automated strike zone does take into account. But you got to keep in mind, if you're throwing a breakaway slider that just catches the front end of the plate at the bottom right corner and it ends up in the dirt and the catcher has to block it, that's not a strike. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, an automatic strike zone can't tell you that. An automatic strike zone will tell you that's a strike every single time, but it simply is not, based on the nuances of the game that you simply can't put into an algorithm.
So I have this question for you with the umpire stuff. How quickly into the game do you know what kind of strike zone do you have? Usually, I mean, I know some guys are inconsistent, but can you tell within an inning or so? Like, all right, we got a big zone today, we got a small zone today. Is it a couple pitches? Like, how quickly? Because we're watching games. I'm always running that, right? Like, I got a strikeout prop on Aaron Nola. I want that big strike zone. I want that. I want 6 inches outside. I want that to be a strike. Do you know pretty early most times?
Yes, because we have scouting reports on the umpires as well. We have their hot charts. We know where they're calling strikes and balls. We know that this umpire has a small zone lower to the ground. We know he likes to call higher strikes. In fact, if you want to look at strikeout props and you want to dig a little deeper, start looking up umpires. Very legitimately. You can look it up on Twitter. There's a thing called Umpire Scorecard that breaks down every umpire scorecard from every single game. The amount of pitches they missed, how far they missed, hot zones, cold zones, and you can start cross-referencing that with pitchers that are going on the mound. For instance, this came in handy really big about a week and a half ago for Dylan Cease, who I have already told you once today is my strikeout prop king of the universe. Well, you put Doug Eddings behind the plate, and he's going to hit a new career high total of 13, as he did.
Yeah, here's what I'm gonna miss, Cody, as we move forward. I'm gonna miss the arguments between umpires and managers and players. I'm gonna miss it. It's good as we have the automated strike zone. It's not gonna make any sense, right? Like, if they're having even if there's an umpire back there, but if he's being told if it's a ball or a strike, like, it's silly to argue with him moving forward, right? Like you're basically arguing with a computer. It's not gonna have the same umph to it. I like that. I'm gonna miss it. I think it's like the old school part of baseball that's still fun. Watching, and you mentioned those stories, watching like an umpire and a manager or a player go back and forth. I love that stuff, and we're about to lose it.
I think we're not going to lose it. Hey, managers are still going to argue. I've already
Gotta
seen
yell at somebody.
Yeah, no, there's been video overturns that managers come out and argued and gotten tossed out of the game, arguing with an umpire who didn't make the call. It was a guy in a booth in New York that made the call. So
right.
It's still we're gonna still see plenty of stupid umpires and managers yelling at each other. It's gonna be great.